Hello everyone, it's new video time and I'm going to show you my records, my vinyl, not all of them, just the ones I have around, which is most of them. So I'm traditionally more of a CD person. That's how I've built my music collection up over the years. So that's my favourite format. My vinyl tends to be stuff I see secondhand in charity shops and stuff. Some of them you'll see also my mum's. I'll point those out. I have a record player and she doesn't, so de facto mine, not really, but yeah, and it's mostly albums, LPs, some singles. Here we go then. Right, so what you just saw then was the intro I recorded a few months ago, back when I was actually going to do it. However, I got caught up and I've sort of just abandoned the project until now. I've done it tonight. I've just filmed the ensuing hour of what you're going to see. So, hello, let's do it again. So, yeah, I'm going to show you my records. Not all of them, just the ones I have in my two chests. I've done two chests, as you'll see now in Cutaway. Yeah, so everything you're going to see in the video is going to be from those two chests, more or less. But I'm not a fan of record collection videos because it's like people have sculpted them to reflect their tastes in the way I have my CD collection. You know, as I've already said, my record collection is secondary. It's just stuff I've chanced upon. So it's a bit indeterminate what's actually in it, like, as it goes along, which I like, which is why I think it might be interesting for a video. By the way, sorry for the change of room, it's a bit difficult doing this. But the result is that it's a mix of 80s canon classics, 70s charity shop pop that people need to hear again, and 90s dance 12 inches. So look forward to that. And now we begin. So we start with possibly my favourite 10cc album, or one of them, How Dare You? It's definitely one of my favourites. And this is their fourth album, And the Last with Godly and Cream. It's got a nice gatefold. This is the one with Art for Art's Sake and I'm Mandy Fly Me. Yeah, it used to be my favourite album, 1976. Then another art rock album, Out in Speak by David Essex, actually overtook it in the end. This is an odd one. I got this in a charity shop. Well, I mean, I got most of these in charity shops, but this is Audio Obstacle Course Era 3, which is sure their trackability. They did like the needles, and this is to test the trackability of their needles. So there's like sibilance test and all sorts of weird stuff, like a band one, testing levels. It's just a weird thing. My thinking at the time, I was about 17 when I got this, was it'd be cool to sample it, like sample the violin or there's like a bass drum test. But I never actually have, because I don't really have a way of doing that. Bad news, by bad news, which actually has a sticker on it saying this recording contains material which may cause offence. Like an early parental advisory sticker. Comes again, nice gatefold. Summer '87. So if you don't know Bad News, they were Comics Represents, a couple of episodes / films of that. Like Spinal Tap, but better. And we've got Peter Richardson as Spiderweb, Aid Emerson as Vim Fuego, Nigel Planer as Den Dennis, and Rick Mail as Colin Grigson. The Beat second album, Wappen. Now their first album, I Just Can't Stop It, is my favourite debut album by anyone ever. Full stop. So, but on the second album, they slowed it down. It's not quite as frantic. They got these slower rhythms in drawn further afield. So there's a bit of calypso, bit of dub, and it was a big critical hit in its day. It's sort of been neglected a bit in recent, which is sad because it's one of the more adventurous albums of the post-punk era, and it's very good, and it's a lot going on it, so I recommend it. The Bee Gees with Main Course. This is quite a thick card. I don't know what's going on here. This is one I've had to record later, by the way, and I've inserted it back because it was in the wrong record box, and there's a few more of those coming up. This wasn't even a hit album here. They stopped having hit albums here at this point, but this was 75, and it has Jive Talking on it. This was like the beginning. They The album before this, Mr. Natural, is where they start exploring funk, R&B, black music from America, where they've moved to. This is where it sort of starts to solidify into disco a bit, but not entirely. There's still a few sort of country-ish ones. But then from after this album is when the disco becomes more everywhere in their discography for a few years. Big Country, Steel Town, which is in a protective sleeve, their second album, produced by Steve Lillywhite at ABBA Studios in Sweden, Polar Studios. So their first album is the one that everyone remembers now, but this is the one that actually got to #1. And it's a lot broodier. It's a sort of like a Scottish folk album as a big music. Again, quite post-funky, because the lead single was East of Eden, which is, it's a bit tuneless, and I mean that in the best possible way. Lots of sort of charcoal, noisy guitars, and a very anxious sound. A very good album. Max Boyce, we all had Doctor's Papers. So this is actually, I mean, if you don't know who Max Boyce is, he was a popular Welsh stand-up comedian in the 70s and a singer-comedian as well. But it's actually, you'd think it would mostly be people like Welsh working class people buying this. No, it was a #1 album all over the UK. I saw it described as the first #1 album to have a proper working class identity. You know, this was a few years before punk. This was 75, so that's quite interesting. And it's definitely a snapshot of a different era. Very intimate. There's a lot, you know, the crowd and Max feed off each other very well. The Dreaming, my favourite Kate album. This is, yeah, it's, well, if you know the album, I'm sure you do. But if you don't, listen to it because it's very good. This is my, this is an original, yeah, most far out music, arguably, and her best, I think. On a related note, Hounds of Love. Yeah, a lot of people love Hounds of Love, and they should because it's very good. Don't know which side I prefer. Some people prefer the Hounds of Love side, some the Ninth Wave side. I don't know which I prefer most, but I always play them together, so it's sort of hard to separate them. This is Casino Classics Chapter 1. Now, all my various artist compilations, I've got them at the end of my second box, apart from this one. I might have already inserted them in the correct alphabetical order. You know that because you're watching it. Or I may not have done. So this was the famous Northern Soul nightclub, Wigan Casino. Started their own label to re-release some of the classic songs. Well, not that they were classics then. It helped make them classics for, you know, in the field of Northern Soul. But yeah, it's slightly DJ mixed as well, sort of crossfades really, to give it the Wigan Casino sounding experience. And it has the 3 Before 8 on it, if you're familiar with that, which is Long After Tonight Was All Over by Jimmy Radcliffe, which is one of my favourite songs of the 60s. Time Will Pass You By Toby Legend, and another favourite song of mine of the 60s, I'm On My Way by Dean Parrish. And those 3 songs together were played just before 8 a.m. every day at the end of an all-nighter at Wigan Casino. Every day. David Cassidy's Romance. So a theme of this video will be me sort of reappraising artists who maybe have not been so reappraised since they were famous. And this is like his mid-80s album. Alan Tarney produced it, who I think worked with Cliff Richard as well later on. He did some nice stuff with him as well. So, but yeah, this is like his sophistopop album. It's you know, it's not amazing, but it's nice. It's pleasant in the best possible way. But some of his 70s stuff, like when he was at his peak, like Dreams Ain't Nothing But Wishes, that's a really good album, and I recommend it to people who like their. There's a song on it that sounds like the Beach Boys. This is a stranger one. This is the Choir of St James Parish Church, Trowbridge. Now, I got this in a charity shop in Trowbridge. I'm from Trowbridge. And I like the idea that there was an album from Trowbridge that wasn't by Crazy House, that long forgotten 80s band who come from the town. I haven't played this, but I wanted to own it. Again, in a sleeve, because I got this in Bristol. This is Gary Clale's Tackhead sound system with Tackhead Tape Time, which is I mean, it's a bit of a cult classic, I suppose. You know, Tuckhead were, you know, one of the most, silently influential bands of their day. I suppose you could sort of call this the beginnings of industrial hip hop. But Gary Clow, he's the MC on it in East and Bristol, but he's not often on it. It's mostly quite sort of funky, industrial. I mean, the song title's Mind at the End of a Tether, Half Cut Again, Hard Left. You get the idea. You sort of get where this is coming from. But yeah, Adrian Sherwood, it's Head Over Heels, Cocteau Twins. Not my favourite by them, but up there. Yeah, it's a lovely, well, not with a 4AD sleeve. Ooh. Perry Como, and I Love You So. Now, I'm not a huge Perry Como fan. I don't think anyone who's alive still is today, despite this being a huge album in '74. But I'm not really interested in exploring him generally. But this album, half the songs are arranged by Bergen White, I don't know how you say it, who did one of the most radical sort of easy listening albums, if you like, of the late '60s, called For Women Only. The arrangements on that and the arrangements on this, I don't know, how do I describe it? I won't describe it because I can't describe it and I'm not going to waste much time describing it. But basically, yeah, there's a lot of nuance to this that maybe you wouldn't expect. A very good arrangement. And the marimbas on the title track, lovely. This is one of my more recent purchases. I got this at Rough Trade in Bristol, which is it's Elvis Costello featuring the Interactions, or it was the Costello Show. That's what it's actually labelled as. It's not one of my favourite Costello albums, but I do like it a lot. But it has been a while since I heard it, so I need to play it again. So this is our first 12-inch single, isn't it, I think? So this is Credit to the Nation with Call It What You Want. A bit of a social harmony banger within the realm of British hip-hop. And it samples Smells Like Teen Spirit, and I love the idea that on the indie dance floor in 1994, and you heard it was more likely to be that playing. I wish it still was, because it's such a good song. This is actually my mum's, but it's her copy of Wish by Cure. This is an odd one because the house has this on CD, vinyl, and cassette. My parents are big fans, but it's a double album, 2 vinyl set as the original sticker shows. And I could talk all day about any Cure album, but I'll spare you that. But look what it does come with. It comes with like a card advertising their previous albums, as does the CD. I don't remember if the cassette does. But yeah, my general view of this album is this Twilight Garden, brilliant B-side, as is Halo, and the higher mix of High is better than the one that was actually a single and is on the album. But the album's very good. I just think maybe Wendy Time may have been better as a B-side or something. Doing the Unstuck as well, but I know a lot of people love that one. But fair enough. It's a very good album, and it's their last one to be this consistent. From 1992, that was. Now, this is the debut album by Darts, who are one of the biggest bands in Britain in the late 70s, but they've this is a pattern that will keep recurring, I suppose, but they've been a bit forgotten in the years since. Which is a shame, because they almost signed to Stiff, but they weren't new wave. They, even though they looked like a bit like a new wave band, they were instrumental, I suppose, in introducing a generation to doo-wop, but very rock and roll infused doo-wop. And they didn't do it like rubbish, like Shawaddy Waddy. They're actually very good. They clearly loved their material, and they were connoisseurs, and they played it well, and they're very fun. But this is sealed. I got it for £1, and I don't really want to open it. So if I see it again unsealed, I'll buy it again to actually listen to. I might even be buying the CD box set of all their albums that exists, because their second album's really cool. I think it was better than this one. This is Second Honeymoon by Deaf School. Now, if you don't know Deaf School, they were like a cabaret kind of art rock band in the mid-70s, and they didn't really have any commercial success. But what they did have was Clive Langer, and that's why the band were an influence on Madness, because Clive Langer later became their co-producer. And you can hear, Madness in the rearview mirror, if you like, but it also kind of bit of Roxy, maybe, bit of Sailor, who I'll come on to later, bit of Backridge. Yeah, but I love sort of the the realm of arty pop music in the 70s that everyone kind of ignores. And we've already seen some of that anyway, and there's a lot more to come. What you see here is, I don't know if you can see it on the camera because it's laptop reflecting, but look, it's a hologram. This is the Doctor Who theme from '86, but it's not vinyl, it's a cassette, which is not glued in at all. Well, it was glued in, but yeah, 34 years haven't been kind to it. Every mother's favourite in the 60s, Val Dunican with Val Dunican Rocks But Gently, which is one of the best album names ever. And I've not actually heard this, but a blogger I like did a lovely review of it. He frames it very much as being quite central to an important narrative of the 60s, if you like. But I'm sure there's more to it than easy listening. I'm sure, as the review states. And one thing you don't get anymore is sleeve notes that describe the album. That's a classic 60s thing that's faded. And this is one of the only LPs I have for those. A special word of praise should go to Ken Thorne for the tasteful orchestra and choral arrangements, which are such an important part of this album. So I look forward to hearing. Yeah, time for another canon album, but rightfully so. New Boots and Panties, Ian Dury. Lovely, beautiful Barney Bubbles sleeve. An album of the punk generation that has funk, it has jazz, it has musical, it has avant-garde white noise splurts. I'm paraphrasing when I say this, I think, but yeah. I know that sounds like a really silly way of putting it, but yeah, there isn't really another person like this one. His mind, this 35-year-old short man with polio, who is a genius. Another favourite of mine is the second David Essex album with original sticker advertising the hits. Now, I love David Essex. He's way better than his image would represent. This is an art rock album. He is an art rock musician. Look, he's sad on the back, but he's open his eyes are open here. But his first 4 albums were produced by Jeff Wayne. And it shows, and I mean, like, this is better than War of the Worlds, I think. His David Essex productions, very forward-looking. A Window is quite, it'd make more sense that a post-punk or an industrial group would try something quite as creepy as that. And the same with Stardust, which was amazingly a top 10 hit, which starts with prolonged heartbeats. Kind of weird, and he sort of comes in quite severely. And at the end, there's like a gong being lowered into the water that makes like a wobbly. It's a really strange song. I think it's one of the weirdest songs to be a hit of it, at least in that era. Cannot recommend this man. I love him. I love you, David Essex. Fine Young Cannibals' second and final album, The Raw and the Cooked. One of my favourite albums ever. Really, it stands up amazingly well. There's a lot going on. You've got, yes, Roland Gift is a great soul singer. Well, these 2 men here, 2 men who had with a drum machine and a trumpet. Bits, it's a very 1989 pleasant album with bits of acid house, but it all meshes beautifully. Bits of doo-wop in there as well. And every song sounds like it could have been a number 1 pretty much. And 2 of them were in America, but sadly not here. Fatboy Slim, Yamama / Song for Shelter 12-inch. It's just the 2 originals that are from the album Halfway Between the Ghetto and the Stars on this side. But on the other side, you have the Chemical Brothers remix of Song for Shelter, which is a very glitchy, acidy, squelchy version of the very referential Funky House original. I really like Fatboy's stuff from this era. I know it's a bit divisive to some people, but push for tempo. And from one skint 12-inch to another, Freck Nasty, Fresh one more time. I wasn't sure, I hadn't actually heard this before I bought it. The American hip hop producer Freck Nasty. Although if you just have Rec, that's another skin artist, Rec, who I'd love to own some material by. Duke by Genesis. Now I am an unabashed champion of early 80s Genesis. And I think that run of singles from this album and Abacab, so what would that be? That will be Turn It On Again, Duchess, Misunderstanding from this one, and Abacab, Keep It Dark, No Reply At All from the next one. Abacab is pretty much a perfect run of singles, I think. But this is, again, a slightly neglected album, but it's very good, I think. all sorts of yeah, the pop songs are great, the prog ones are great, and they all mesh really well. But then I don't think of them differently like that. But I know that their fans do. So, well, I am one of their fans, but I'm not so obsessed with. You get the idea. And it's some of these have been gatefolds, and I haven't been showing you them. But look at the lovely illustrations. Look at the lovely Joker playing the saxophone. A David Grant album. David Grant, formerly of Lynx, my favourite Brit funk band, possibly, or possibly Light of the World, or possibly High Tension. But by this point, this was '87. He'd gone solo. He'd done stuff with Jackie Graham, and he got a lot slicker American-leaning sound. Even though same producer as with Lynx, Bob Carter. I haven't heard this, by the way. I only know certain songs. I need to play it. Peter Gabriel 3, or Melt as it's also known, or it's actually just called Peter Gabriel. This is his best, I think. That's not an unpopular opinion, but still. But this is an amazing, but yes. A #1 album as well. One of them, after McCartney 2 was the #1 album before it. So 2, random avant rock at the top of the charts. Guy's second album. So Guy, the New Jack Swing Pioneers with Teddy Riley. And I've only heard that. I've not heard this one yet, but this is The Future. Their first album is a sort of genre-defining classic. So it sounds so weird saying that out loud. It's a bit cliche, doesn't it? But it's true. But by this point, a lot of internal problems in the group. I think this is their last. Herb Albert's Tijuana Brass, Whipped Cream and Other Delights. The reason this is a good album for what it is. It's probably one of the best lounge albums of the '60s. But I mean, not what I've heard loads, but But apparently in America, you always see this in secondhand stores or thrift stores, as they call them over there. I'd never seen it in Britain until I saw it in a charity shop near me. So I was like, ooh, I'll seize the moment. Steve Hillage, Motivation Radio. This is his 1977 album, and I like his sort of spacier, proggier leaning stuff before this, but this is where he discovers dance rhythms and electronics, and that's when he changes his course towards a path I prefer. And it begins with this one. He has Malcolm Cecil of Tonto's Expanding Hat Band producing, and Tonto, which is an enormous early day synth, from which he, hence the name Tonto's Expanding Hat Band, is on this album. That massive, enormous room-size synth. There's some material here that's like one song in particular has like a trancey synthesizer part, and that's in the '90s he formed System 7, which was like a sort of ambient techno-y, that kind of Orby ballpark, and that provides in 1977 an indication of where he would be going. But also you have like Radio, which is the title track, and that's quite an ambient, for the most part, guitar. Lovely album. And I did the Wikipedia article to it, but don't read it. It's terrible. I'm gonna have to rewrite it all because that was when I was bad at writing Wikipedia articles. And Green as well. Did that one as well. And System 777. Another 12-inch Minefield by Eye Level, which is a late era Brit funk classic. It's got a bit more abstract than a bit we're very firmly in the '80s by this point. But what sort of strikes me about it is how it sounds like it could have been on I by A.R. Kane, the second album by them, which came out in '89, but this was '83. So and I don't just mean musically or structurally, but even the singing, the voice is quite, the records that predict the future are the ones you may least expect. Bodytalk by Imagination. Unbelievably, I've still not heard this entire album, but again, the hit classic song, the title track, from 1981, from the popular end of Brit funk, were Imagination, and they've never really had their kudos, but they were very good. Quiet Life by Japan, which is my third favourite, I suppose. I suppose it's quite a lot of people's third favourites. A lot of people go backwards chronologically, but lovely David, looking very, very lovely in 1979. So by this point they were firmly in there. Obviously David Sylvian would be capable of a lot more yet, but this was This is his first classic album, I think. The 12-inch of Jesus Jones, The Right Decision. Now, Jesus Jones are local, and I know a lot of people take the piss out of them, but of course I like them. And, you know, I would anyway, even if they weren't from the area, because I have an obsession with this kind of era of sort of techno-leaning rock, which is what they were. The album this comes from, Perverse, is famous for being one of the first rock albums that's almost is entirely digitally recorded. I can't remember how he did it, but quite a bizarre process. And a lot of people don't like the album and all the bands really, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff on that album, of which this song is probably one of them, but it's not one of my favourites by theirs. And it says free poster, but no, there's not one. John of the Pleased Women 12-inch, Give Me Strength, or John Pleased Women as he's usually known now. This is a promo. The one that got the official release had a blue cover, and it just wasn't in the Perfecto logo text. It was in small case. Yeah, so this actually made the top 30. Not that it would have got much radio play. This is a period where anything that had club appeal could potentially make the top 30. But it's it's a house instrumental, and this was the era for those sort of things charting. Just off, club play, club appeal. And usually for a Perfecto release, no Paul Oakenfold mixes or anything. I don't think it has anything to do with any of the tracks here, which are just mixes of the same song. So this is K-Class's 7th single, I think. What You're Missing, and it's got an instantly recognizable deconstruction sleeve. This is again another sort of long forgotten top 40 hit within the realm of progressive house. All the provincial nightclubs would have played this, I suppose. It's very nice, and as well as being on deconstruction, as it was part of a short-lived partnership with Parlophone, I think. I might be wrong, but the logo's on it. It was ages since after this until they released another single, which was called Burning in 1998. But the dreadful Baby Bump song of the same name charted higher the same year. Tom Lehrer, I've never known how you pronounce that. Tom Lehrer, An Evening with Tom Lehrer, from 1959. But this is a reissue, I think. But yeah, one of the great American musical comedians, satirical musical comedians. This made the top 10, I think, in 59. I got into him at the same time as I got into Flanders and Swan, who are like British, and maybe they're the closest thing Britain had to this American man. Yeah, recorded live. We did a studio version of this album as well, which just isn't as good because it's better with the audience bouncing off and the dialogue as well. One of my perhaps odder ones. This is actually an issue of Mojo I got in 2010, when on the 40th anniversary of Let It Be. But it comes with, their tribute albums to get people to perform on them. Well, this comes with one for Let It Be. I don't want to have to take this thing off, but what I will show you is the magazine actually is inside it, but also look at the label. Quite cute. Another 12-inch, Lion Rock, Fire Up the Shushaw. Lion Rock were definitely part of what I like, that sort of Big Ten, mid to late 90s, bit of big beat, bit of house, bit of techno, bit of dub. It's all in there, quite upfront records, and this is one of them. Their first album is what this is from, An Instinct for Detection. I wrote the Wikipedia article for it. One of my favourite albums of all time, One World by John Martin. Beautiful, beautiful. I wrote the Wikipedia article for it. This is this is the most I've ever paid for a record. I think I got it for 15 quid, which is, I don't spend that. As I've said already, I think if I remembered to record the intro afterwards and then put it at the start, then I would have already have mentioned that. But beautiful, languid, dubby, of it. Guitar music. I don't want to say rock or folk or whatever because what's the point? It's just one world, isn't it? That's just what it is. It's one world music. Paul McCartney's Russian album in Russian. Now, I don't know if this is a reprint or I don't think it's a bootleg. Who knows? But it's got this little logo there. I don't know. This is his rock and roll album he did in '88, which originally only came out in Russia. But the sleeve, it looks a little bit fake, I think. I don't know. That's like what fake records are thing, isn't it? Or maybe not. I don't know. Mega City 4, who I'm not a huge fan actually of Mega City 4. But I guess I find them quite interesting as I do Senseless Things and all those other sort of late 80s Fraggle indie bands that the Enemy were briefly obsessed with and then were left to the sands of time. Methods of Dance. This is a compilation that Virgin released in 1981 of songs. New pop is what it is, really. It's sort of new pop / late new wave stuff from the Virgin roster. British Electric Foundation, Devo, DAF, Fingerprint, 717, Simple Minds, Magazine, Japan, Human League. A pretty perfect lineup, I think. Another House 12-inch. Mosaic, Nothing in the World. Beautiful, positive sleeve. Oh, it's lovely. I really wanted to own one of these sleeves because I don't actually have any other 12 inches by them. The Motivate mix is the most famous version of this, and I love Motivate. Bill Nelson, Quit Dreaming and Get on the Beam. Now, I love Bill Nelson. He's under-recognised, as a lot of these people are on this list. But if you like your early XTC, bit of Cardiacs maybe, bit of Devo. I mean, I'm not as big on Devo as I am the other two, but yeah, and you don't know Bill Nelson. Bill Nelson from this era, so early 80s, late 70s as well. He did an album with Red Noise, called Bill Nelson's Red Noise, called Sound on Sound. What's it called to that? Very synthy, jerky, stiff, mechanical, new wave, beautiful music. But not only that, it comes with a bonus disc, which is songs, Sounding the Ritual Echo. I've only heard this once, Atmospheres for Dreaming. So that was like, this album took a while to come out because he was switching labels from EMI to Mercury and there was all sorts of, hassle. But in the meantime, he just did this. I suppose it's like a sort of typical kind of ambienty, soundscapey side project for a rock musician to do in the early 80s. But a bit like Will Sargent's Theme for Grind, Pete Shelley's Sky Yen, which I know was recorded earlier. But also British Electric Foundation's Music for Stairways, if we step beyond people playing guitars. Now, I used to be a massive collector of Now albums, on CD mostly, and I had a few on cassette as well. And even a few on video. I used to do videos. But I had a few on vinyl as well. So Now 2 from 1984. Now 8, a beautiful Now 8. What the hell was up with Roy Wood collaborating with Doctor and the Medics on a cover of Waterloo, which he inspired to begin with? Bit weird, that. And The Wizard by Paul Hardcastle, which was Vitalik Hopson. Sorry, I got distracted. I've just edited a lot of thinking space out of the video. The beautiful Now 12. Look at this. And this, the second side of this, the second disc rather, Doctor in the TARDIS. Great starting. The other side of it, Theme Fest Express. Great start to it. But Now 11, I think, has the edge because it ends with the whole side of house music, which was... And finally, among Now albums, Now 18, with the hideous sleeve. But another... I used to sort of think of this as like the twin dilemma to Now 17's Caves of Androzani, which is not fair. Now 17 is like the best Now album possibly. And there's only like 3 or 4 dub songs on it. The rest of it's brilliant, pretty much. But I've come around on this. There's a lot of great stuff on this, especially on the second disc, I think. Although that's not to say that something like as terrible as that is good. But when I said that was the final Now album, actually, I forgot to mention Now of a Christmas album. Yeah. Gary Newman's third album, or fifth, including the 2 Tube Army ones, Dance. this is the point where his fan base started dwindling a little bit permanently. He went a bit esoteric on this one. It's kind of some ambient-y, kind of long, soundscapey songs. A lot of space on the record. Not as poppy, bit more, experimental, as it were. Sort of his Dazzle Ships, I suppose. If he's Kid A, and we'll be coming back to Dazzle Ships. And finally, in this box, the first 3 Gilbert O'Sullivan albums. I'll do them separately. So I love Gilbert O'Sullivan, as does my friend. He sort of helped me. He turned me on to him, and me and him did the Wikipedia article to this one. I did the next 2 on my own because I was impatient, and I'm glad I did, because we wouldn't be able to have done them the same way now, for sources had disappeared. But himself, so he was one of the best songwriters of the 70s. Yeah, I think Bob Stanley, is it Bob? Yeah, I think it was the missing link between Ray Davies and Squeeze, I think he said. Now, I don't really need to be saying all this stuff, but it's as good as an advert as any if you're not familiar with Gilbert O'Sullivan and his lovely, witty Baroque pop, beautiful songs. And that's my favourite by him, which is Houdini Said, which is very intricate, great lyrics, great wordplay. I just love it. His next album was called Back to Front, and that was in '72, with his 2 biggest hits, Alone Again Naturally and Claire. But it's a little bit more eclectic than the first album. He's got, he's a pianist, like a sort of plonky, Fats Domino inspired. But on this one, there's a bit more going on, more interesting rhythms. This is the intention. It's a little bit variety showish, but he's so good at it. And he's quite a daring lyricist when it comes to songs like Who Was It, which, read the Wikipedia article. And his third album was slightly less successful than the first 2, which is I'm a Writer, Not a Fighter, from '73. On this album, he embraced the pop image a bit more, sort of lots of keyboards, lots of funk influences, lots of rock influences. So it sort of balances for sort of Stevie Wonder kind of sounding stuff with sort of more traditional Gilbert-y kind of numbers. And again, there's more intricate rhythms going on, lots of interesting sounds. It's a bit underrated, this one, compared to the first 2. It's a lot shorter, and it's a lot less cohesive, I suppose, in the sense that the first 2 albums, it's sort of like they break the 4th wall a little bit. You have like intro songs and outro songs where he speaks to you. This album does away with that. So, but it's great, I think. It's I suppose it was one of the first albums by a white man from the British Isles to sort of go a little bit dancey, funky rhythms. What I'm saying is the road to Kid A begins here, basically. Right then, box number 2. And we start with, oh look, Architecture and Morality by OMD. My favourite album of 1981. And that is close, because there's a lot of albums I adore that year. And I really do mean a lot. It might be my favourite year for albums ever, possibly. This is my mum's copy originally. It's a little bit torn, but I don't mind. But after that, OMD did my favourite album of all time. It just so happens that I have that here in better nick. Even with the die cut, hello, die cut sleeve. What do I say about Dazzle Ships? I've got a meme page named after it. I've said a lot about this album before, so I don't really need to go over it again. But this is the greatest album of all time. Yeah, if you like pure paranoid, Avant synth pop. I feel silly describing it. I don't need to describe it. You probably know what it is, because if you're watching this video, you're probably like one of my 5 closest friends or something. So there's no need for an explanation. But the Orb Assassin. Now, this is the 12-inch single of said song from 1992. And it's the Oasis of Rhythms mix that is the main mix of this. which is actually a 15-minute version of the one that's on the CD single, the 7-inch. But unbelievably, this was a top 20 hit, even though it's an abstract ambient instrumental, which goes to show that in the early 90s, you could get away with things like that a bit more. Lest we forget, earlier in 1992, The Orb had a #1 album, which was possibly the most abstract #1 album that there has ever been. It wouldn't surprise me if it was anyway. Let's just move that. Pig Bag with Dr. Heckle and Mr. Jive. I got this in Bath, and it's a very good album from the, well, if you know the pop group, the Bristol experimental post-punk band, who are on the no-wavier, jazz funkier side of things. Well, Pig Bag were a spin-off of that group, I suppose you could put it. And we all probably know Papa's Got a Brand New Pig Bag, which, along with Haircut 100's favourite shirts, is one of the more Afrobeaty 1981 hits. But this is their album, and it could have come out on Z if it was American, but it's British. My mum's original copy of Dark Side of the Moon. Now, I don't actually know how this got in, like why this is one of the ones that I have with my records. Needs no explanation, does it? My favourite Police album, which is Zenyatta Mondata, which in their show All Music, who have it at a 5, unlike their other albums, is possibly a bit of an unpopular opinion. But the reason I love it is, well, the band stings, but they thought they rushed it. They had only a few weeks to do it, and as a result, they think there's only a few proper songs. There's a lot of quote unquote filler, which is not a word I like, and it's not true. The fact that a lot of the songs seem a bit unfinished makes them seem a lot roomier, a lot spacier, a bit more. I have said this word quite a lot tonight for some reason, but abstract. Marcelo Carlin even compares Shadows in the Rain to A.R. Kane, which makes perfect sense to me because that's one of the dubbier, more, experimentally kind of ones. And on a similar note, you have Voices Inside My Head, which is again quite an intricately, a lot of repetition. I like a lot of repetition. But Shadows in the Rain to me, it sounds like Andy's guitar is it's like a buried Adrian Belew, like an ominous threat that's sort of buried in the mix under all the sort of dub shapes. I don't know if what I'm saying is ridiculous or what, but that's just how I see it anyway. A lot of people's favourite Prefab Sprout album, Steve McQueen, and you can't go wrong with that. However, Swoon is my favourite, I think, as of late, and it's probably my 4th favourite, with Jordan and From Langley Park to Memphis in between. But yeah, this is obviously another canon masterpiece that it doesn't really need any introduction. From 1985. I haven't been saying the years to all of these, but I don't, I don't know. My mum has every 70s Queen album except for Jazz when she went off them. Somehow we've got The Game now. Well, I do anyway. I got it at a boot sale, but I'm not a huge. It's a good album, I think. This is where my laptop screen reflects on the silver because it's Marcelo, who I just mentioned on the Police thing, says it looks like an ECM Records out jazz sleeve if you ignore the photography, which I can see. The 1991 IRS Best of REM, which actually is. Oh, I've got 2 records there. But it's in a lovely, lovely feeling. Lovely feeling. Got it on CD as well. It's I like one of their studio albums on vinyl, but I don't as a present. Now then, Sailor is next, and they sort of mentioned them earlier, I think, when I did Deaf School. But Sailor were quite. I mean, look at this album cover. What does that tell you? It tells you they're a bit naff, but actually, I really like them. Again, mid-70s. They sort of came from glam, I suppose it's sort of fair to say, but they're a bit more vaudeville. They had they made their own instrument called, what was it called? It would even say the Nickelodeon, yeah. It's sort of got all sorts of weird instruments on it, and the idea is that they're sailors and they've buoyed somewhere and they've taken their music. There's a whole sort of like funny story around the band. But this was their first album, and it's a gatefold, and it was a flop, even though it was on a major label. So that could have killed the band, even. But however, their cabaret art rock stylings, if that's how you want to put it, that's how I'm putting it. I'm speaking a lot more suddenly. Is that good? I don't know. On their next album, Trouble, because there were 2 hits off it. One of them is Glass of Champagne, and the vocal stylings on that just invent Andy Partridge. I don't know what he'd make of me saying that, but that's what I think. Yeah, unintentionally. And Girls, Girls, Girls as well was the next one. So yeah, along with like bands like Fox, yeah, they're one of the more underappreciated arty-leaning pop bands of the mid-70s. Leo Sayer, Thunder in My Heart. Now this is a weird one because the spine is actually printed on the front. But anyway, I've not heard this yet. This is his 5th album. I love Leo. I think he has some great songs. I think my favourite is probably on this album. Or it might be Why Is Everybody Going Home from Silverbird, which is his first album. But the title track to this, if I'm honest, might even be my favourite disco record ever by anyone, excluding High Energy. I like my High Energy, but that's the vocal performance of a lifetime. He's vicious on it, and it's a brilliant pop song, and it deserved to go to number 1 29 years later in a remix, but the original should have gone all the way back in 77. Perfect. Now we've just had Prefab Sprout, but and I said my favourite album by them was Swoon, and that sort of reminds me how my favourite album by Squeaky Plissy is Songs to Remember, which was their proper debut, which is one of the greatest albums of all time. Lovely shiny sleeve. I don't know, you can't even see it, but it's just so smooth feeling. But yeah, this is where Green Dark Side got his pop together without compromising any of his abstractions, his philosophies. He's a very clever chap, as I'm sure you know. My favourite song, probably Jet de Rida, which, again, if I'm going to bring Swoon back into it again, but usually it's me bringing Swoon in. It's me bringing this into conversations with Swoon. But Jet de Rida, in terms of the, musical, jigsaw puzzle with a few pieces in the wrong place, and lyrically as well, it's like Q Fanfare or something. One of the best debut albums of all time. Yeah, this is basically Green Dark Side new pop. The perfect person for it, as he proved here and as he proved again on Cuban Psych 85. The 12-inch single of Let's Go All the Way by Sly Fox and 1986 One Hit Wonder, which is probably, I would say, one of the more innovative, if you like, mid-80s hits. The sort of jackhammer, almost industrial beats, the on-cue, lyrical target. If you compare it to what protest records in the mid-80s are usually like, this is a lot more to the point, I think, and it's a lot more fun. It's banging. It's a banger. The debut album by Soul to Soul, which Club Classics Volume 1, obviously a very famous album, but as I understand it, the sound of London in the summer of 89, you heard this coming out of every car, every shop, every home, every window, which must have been great. Yeah, of course, Soul to Soul with this album and the associated singles, they bridged Brit Funk with the 90s, with trip hop, with all the stuff that makes more sense because something like this happened on a very public scale. Argy Bargy by Squeeze, which is one of the 2 best loved albums, I suppose, with East Side Story. This is my favourite of the 2. 2 perfect singles, especially Another Nail in My Heart. You've got so good. You've got Difford and Tilbrook. Their songwriting partnership it's at an all-time high here. This is their Imperial Phase moment. Quo by Status Quo. Again, another one in my 70s reappraisals because in the minds of a lot of people, Status Quo are a bit all kind of samey, but they're not. In the mid-70s, when they were really at their peak, a lot of adventure on their albums, and this is one example. It's possibly my favourite album by them, but like Alan Lancaster, who was their bassist and the best member, I think, contributes the first 2 songs, which are Backwater, a bit unusual for them, and Just Take Me, which is just fantastic. It's got ramshackle percussion and everything, and then Slow Train, which is the 8-minute closing song. They had a habit of ending their albums at this time with quite the longer songs that sort of go through a lot of ideas and sections. So it's not fair to have Quo down as Junga, 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 I don't think, because there's a lot more to them. But then, as I always say, paraphrasing Mark Cinco, I think, Status Quo weren't that different than now. Is that how you pronounce Neu exclamation mark? I've never said it aloud before. Same sort of rock minimalism, yeah. Maybe. So when I first got my record player, my dad got me the reissue of the Stone Roses. It's embossed, which is nice, but side 1 doesn't really play, which is the side that I like the most. It's the only side I really play anything off, if I'm honest. Yeah, it's lopsided. I don't know what's going on there, but it's a shame because I can't listen to it, and it's so lovely packaged as well. Storm Animal by Storm. So Storm, yeah, they're kind of a unique proposition to me because there is that sort of hard house plus trance plus techno doomy kind of menacing axis that a lot of so like Tomcraft and Zombie Nation, I suppose, is sort of the better known end of it. The Storm had Time to Burn, which is fantastic, and this might even be my favourite Storm Animal. Incredible. Yeah, it's a 12-inch classic album again. Keith Sweat with Make It Last Forever, one of the founding stones of New Jack Swing from '87. It took a while to grow on me this because I like the more upbeat stuff. This is a bit kind of slowies. Well, not slowies, but they're love songs. Maybe less emphasis on them. But I got there in the end. It's a good album. Having said that, I haven't heard it in a while, so I need to hear it again. David Sylvian's solo debut, Brilliant Trees. Brilliant album. 1984. Yeah. We like. You've got to love it. Everybody's a Rock Star by Tool Paul. Another 12-inch, 2002. Yeah. The main mix is his own mix. Yeah. Talk. The Colour of Spring. The greatest album of 1986. This is the only Talk I own on vinyl. I think my mum owns something as a 12-inch, but I've never gone into the chest to get. But got this in rough trade. At the same time, I got New Boots and Panties. 2 of my favourite albums on vinyl. Yeah. It doesn't need any explanation, does it? It's a perfect album. I mentioned Tomcraft a minute ago. Here they are with their masterpiece Loneliness and #1 single. And again, part of that sort of, I suppose it's sort of tech house, but a bit of electro house is sort of coming in there. 2003. Yeah, the dark of the club, Paranoia. Got to love it. Rubicon by Tangerine Dream. I don't think this was the one that John Peel played the entirety of. I think that was Phaedra. But yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? They have the best packaging. Now it's the original Virgin logo there, but mine must be a repressing because the actual record is, it's this one. This logo wasn't around just yet. This label, so after the Orb, this is my second ambient release in a blue sleeve. That's very long. So this is where I struggle to put it back. Oh no, it's been alright. Now we've had Dazzle Ships, which is my favourite album of 1983 and of all time. But now it's Soul Mining. which I don't hesitate to say is, this is the day, uncertain smile. This album's almost above discussion, just like Dazzle Ships. I don't know what to say. Giant was my original favourite, actually. Pictures at an Exhibition by Tamisa, if that's how you pronounce it, I'm assuming. From 1975. So this is after his big breakthrough album, Snowflakes Are Dancing. Here he is. And what surprised me about this is, obviously these things are all going to predict, they'll anticipate movements that haven't yet come in electronic music, as you'd expect. This really kind of sounds a bit like vaporwave at times. And I don't mean like the obvious. I mean, when I say vaporwave, I don't really mean vaporwave. I mean like James Ferraro, Human Story 3, Giant Claw, Food Man. I don't know. Just some of the sounds on it just sound like what the conceptonica, as I think Simon Reynolds called it. Which is, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, it does. Some of it sounds like a 2010s avant-garde electronic album, but it's an avant-garde electronic album from 1975 instead. One of the naffest U2 singles as a 12-inch, When Love Comes to Town, B.B. King. I don't know. I don't know how this. I remember getting it at a charity shop. I don't remember why I wanted it, but it does have the hard metal dance mix. That's what it's called, of God Part 2, which was the most. Which was the forward-looking song, as it were, on Rattle and Hum, the one that predicts Acton Baby, musically, not lyrically. UB40 with Signing Off, which was their first album, as I'm sure you know. But this is the original pressing, which comes with the bonus EP, which you need because it has. I'm holding it. Yeah, Madame Medusa, their cover of Strange Fruit. If you don't know it and you think UB40 were just a kind of naff 80s pop reggae push button karaoke band, well, no, because they were fantastic. Very dubby, very gloomy, very Birmingham, I suppose is the best way to put it. The band that would get into the top 10 with songs called The Earth Dies Screaming is not the same band that would get into the top 10 with a song called Rat in the Kitchen, but it was unbelievably different era. That sort of gloomy post-punk hair, it's all over this. The 12-inch of Vienna by Ultravox, which is most famous for being kept off a song that is most famous for keeping this song off number one. What I'm saying is these two songs were born for each other, really. This and Shut Up Your Face. But did I buy this for the song, even though it's good? No, I bought it for the sleeve. Look at this. Look at it. This chrysalis test card. Oh, it's beautiful. Shiny. Oh, I love it. I fell in love when I saw it. I had to get it. Okay. So Slim Whitman, the famous country singer. Red River Valley. Now, I don't even like country, really. Why have I got this? Well, my interest was pipped, really, when I found out it was a big TV advertised number one album at the start of 1977. Keeping off, what it kept off number one was an album with the same cover. You may be familiar with this one. Yeah. Well, Low was kept off number one by Red River Valley with the same album cover. But you think, oh no, and it's a shame, but no, this is actually really nice. And the reason I sort of warmed to it, Marcelo did a review that's like this, which is also a review of Low, but like it's not said that it's just really beautiful writing. And what I like about there's a song called Mr. Tingling Man, Steel Guitar Man, and I don't think Slim is the person playing it, but it has like almost like free improv steel guitar backing in the background for that's how I describe it anyway. I mean, it's perfectly sits with the tune, but it's nice. A posthumous 12-inch for Wild Child with the US remix of Bad Boy, which I imagine was supposed to. It was the follow-up to Renegade Master 98. They probably hoped they'd have a hit with it. They didn't. And when I say they, I don't even know the label, I guess, because he'd been dead for a few years. The Yes album, which is my favourite Yes album prior to going the one, which is not a popular opinion. But then just wait till I tell you that Tomato is my favourite overall. So yeah, I'm not a huge. I don't agree with the yes consensus, but then that's just me. Not that I try and argue it. I just accept it. I like different things about them than maybe a lot of their fans do. Lovely gatefold. 1971. This is the first EP by this county's leading lights, this country's leading lights, this planet's leading lights, XTC, my favourite band of all time. Terry, Barry, Andy, Colin. Now, yeah, this is their first EP. They had, so it's a bit, it's interesting because this is, if you like, they'd never quite sound like this again. Even on white music, there's a bit more experimentation going on with songs like Crosswires. Science Fiction is sort of seen as their first single because Science Fiction leads their singles compilations, but really it was Statue of Liberty, which should have been a #1, and it could have been on Stiff Records, but everyone thinks it's Zolo. It's not Zolo. I've got 2 records again, my mistake. You've probably already seen that because I would have inserted it earlier. But the final one by an artist rather, another House 12-inch. This is Object of Desire from 1996 by Ali Sapak. I hadn't even heard this when I bought it. I was just looking for something to get from this record store in Bath. And mixed by Arthur Baker, Mac Ware. I just thought, all right, it's nice. It's a bit, if I remember correct, I've only heard it the once. 7 inches. This is it. These are the ones I have to hand, so I'll just do these. I mean, quite an unusual few things here. So the second ABC album, Beauty Stab. This is selections from the Magnificent New ABC, from that album. It's a promotional flexi disc. It's Light as Air from 1983. It has clips and all the songs. I don't know how this was distributed, but it's really cool. And I followed that up immediately with another flexi disc from another early 80s new pop act, Ants by Adam and the Ants, which is their not particularly great version of YMCA. Not the best thing in the world. The Assembly Line People program, but there's no definite article, with Noise Vision 80. And this is on Graham Coxen's label, and it's got a proper card sleeve, an embossed Transcopic logo. Don't know if you can see it, but it's quite cool. They were like a lo-fi indie band from his label in the late 90s. I have their album, but I haven't heard it in a long time. A kind of tattered She Loves You in that lovely Parlophone sleeve with I Get You on the B-side. Only cost me a quid, so. A white, I'm not one for fetishy vinyl, but this is quite cool, I think. It's Julian Coates, I Come From Another Planet Baby, white vinyl. This was the first single from his final hit album, Interpreter, which I did the Wikipedia article for. Yeah. Back to Graham Coxen again. This was his Record Store Day 2012. What It Will Take is the A-side, and the B-side is Oh Yeah Yeah. This is back in the A&E era. I don't know. I've ended up with some. I don't know why I've got the Just Like Heaven 7-inch, but I do. Snow and Summer is the B-side. A couple of Depeche Mode ones, Blasphemous Rumours, and Enjoy the Silence. Another EP now, which is Flanders and Swan, who I mentioned earlier when I talked about Tom. Excerpts from At the Top of a Hat, because that's an album I did. So this was in the 50s. This is their first review album. very cosy stuff, and it's still funny. They're still funny, they're not archaic to the point of being just completely the cultural bridge has disappeared. They're funny. Third and final flex disc here from Smash Hits. This was Smash Hits, part of a series of interview flex discs it did, and it's for Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I listened to it once. It's almost they're kind of incomprehensible, kind of weird. But yeah, always forgiven because of Two Tribes being the greatest, the Annihilation mix being the greatest 9 minutes of pop ever made. Genesis Spot the Pigeon EP from '77. I know a lot of their fans sort of serious aren't huge on it. A bit of a stopgap, but I really like Match of the Day, especially. I think this is a good release. One of my favourite songs ever made, and that is Mouldy Old Dough by Lieutenant Pigeon, with the 1.5 minute drum instrumental, The Villain, as a B-side. Now, I've talked about Mouldy Old Dough and Lieutenant Pigeon in so many places, I don't need to repeat it here. A couple of New Order ones now. Touched by the Hand of God. And, oops, upside down. Fine Time. You may have a love technique. By Yoko Ono. It's Walking on Thin Ice for John. But it's got a sticker on the thing, annoyingly. I haven't bothered to take it off. It's got the whole thing, the whole note. I need the 12-inch because obviously the 12-inch is the one to get. This next one's a bit inexplicable because when out in 2012, my best friend was a huge Sex Pistols fan and a huge Guns N' Roses fan. I sort of bought into it, even though I'm not huge on Guns N' Roses really. And I wouldn't buy a fetishy Sex Pistols 7-inch now, but I did at the time. Pretty vacant. It was a limited run of 350,000. This is a 243rd. I don't really know where I got it, but it's quite cool, I guess. What isn't so cool, I spent 13 quid on this. You're a Lie by Slash in Miles Kennedy. Oh, I don't know. I've never even opened it. It's not even. I have no use for it. It's a frisbee. Nah, it's alright. It's alright. Now this is Always There by Marty Webb and the Summer May Orchestra for. I don't even know what BBC show. I didn't buy it for the song. I bought it for that sleeve, that gorgeous BBC record sleeve. The theme from Howard's Way is the B-side. And finally, Forever by Roy Wood, with special thanks to Brian Wilson and Neil Sedaka for their influence. Beautiful song by one of my favourite artists of all time, with Music to Commit Suicide by as the B-side. That is the 7 inches. Yes. Right, so that's it. Thank you for watching.